In this video, I'm going to give you a technique and exercise on how to create lust in your life. And this is my grandfather's technique that he covered, or we covered, in the interview that I had with him, because my grandfather went through different phases in his life where he wanted to manifest love in his life, and he also wanted to manifest at another time a lot of lust in his life. So he created the lust in his life, and that's the technique that I'm going to cover today for you. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on my grandfather. And we are going to be reading this out of my book, which is You Are the Way. This is chapter 5.3. So I'm going to expound on this as we go and mention a lot of things that aren't in the book, but I'm going to just expound on the story here. But this is actually my words here that from another previous video that I made. Okay, so today I'm going to address the question that I've been getting probably 10 or 15 million times regarding my grandfather and how he would manifest relationships. Because as we know, the interview that I had with my grandfather, the one that went viral and everyone loved it, he loved my grandfather's personality and how he met Neville Goddard, and he was a VIP student of Neville Goddard. And then he, at the end of the interview, he started getting into how he was manifesting multiple women in his life, where he, in his words, he was having intercourse 3 or 4 times every single day, at least. Okay, so we're going to get further into that here. So how my grandfather would manifest relationships into his life and how he would have sex 3 or 4 times a day at a minimum. Okay, so first I'm going to give you a little background here. Okay, so in fact, my grandfather ended up divorcing my grandmother based on these manifestations because he wanted to have multiple relations with different women, but that didn't begin that way. He said he just wanted to have intercourse multiple times a day, and it didn't have to be with multiple women. It could have even been my grandmother. But he said he told me that the story was when he went home one night and he wanted to have intercourse with my grandmother, she turned him down. So at this time, my grandfather ran a chain of VIP gentlemen's clubs. So he went back to the club, and then he ended up having an affair that night with another woman, one of the dancers at one of his clubs. So subsequently, this led to the divorce that they had. So he gave her millions, a bunch of properties. Meanwhile, he got together and ended up being his wife was one of the dancers at one of his clubs, her name was Carmen. So he got remarried to her, and she was about 40 years younger than he was. So in this whole process of my grandfather leaving my grandmother and then sleeping with multiple women and manifesting all this lust into his life before he found Carmen, this was his technique right here. Okay, so the process of how my grandfather would create specific relationships with a woman was by finding the girl that he wanted to sleep with. And he would have a conversation with her. He would talk to her. He would study her appearance. So he would find the girl that he wanted to have intercourse with, and he would sit with the girl or stand with the girl, look at her, download all the information about how she looks, how she sounds, what she smells like. So he's bringing all of his senses in, like in the 3-dimensional holographic world. He's downloading all this information for his imaginal act later that night. So essentially, he would study the woman just like you would a $100 bill before you go to sleep at night. You start counting $100 bills. You download all the details of the person, just like you would a $100 bill. And when you go into your imaginary act before you go to sleep at night, you can recreate that. So my grandfather had a specific technique that he used. He would be in bed with this girl in his imagination. He would create a scene with this girl in his imagination, and she would say to him in his imagination that was the most amazing sex I have ever had. And he would create the vivid scene of this girl saying that to him, while they were in bed together, after creating and bringing all of his senses in, and everything like that had already happened. So he's in the wish fulfilled, he's living in the end, and the outcome is exactly how he wants it to be. And he's creating this in his imagination, that this girl is in bed with him, telling him this thing. So anyone can use this technique for any sort of partner that you're trying to attract into your life, or you're trying to manifest into your life by using this technique. And my grandfather said that he was very, very successful at this. And I also confirmed this with many other people, that he was very successful, at having multiple relationships with multiple women every single day. So, but I must admit that my grandfather was also a very wealthy man, and he was really good friends with Carroll Shelby. And he used to tell me stories about, because Carroll Shelby was a VIP member at one of my grandfather's clubs. And Carroll Shelby would actually let my grandfather test drive one of the Shelby Cobras before they even hit the product line. My grandfather would get the Shelby Cobra for an entire weekend before anyone else even had any access to it or anything, before it even hit the product line. My grandfather was riding around in a Shelby GT Cobra. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people in the previous video said that my grandfather wasn't really manifesting these things. He was just a wealthy man, and he had access to all these exotic cars, and he had all this money and all these clubs, so he was able to get all these women based on that. But you have to understand how manifestation works. So if you're manifesting these types of things, like multiple relationships with beautiful women, or whatever you're trying to manifest in your world, things are going to change for you. So your world is going to change, and you're just going to have all of these things that are going to attract these people to you based on what you have. So everything that he had was created from his visualizations. So essentially what this created when he's manifesting all these multiple relationships in his life is changing his concept of himself. Like Neville Goddard teaches, he changed his concept of himself, and then he developed all of these great things to come into his life that then attracted the thing that he was focused on in his visualizations. So whatever needs to happen in your life in order to manifest what you're visualizing is going to happen. So you can't say that it's the wealth. The wealth may have caused those things, but that was part of the manifestation to get to the end result, the wish fulfilled. So everything happened just the way that it was. So if you start manifesting certain things, all these other things are going to start happening in the middle. They're going to make those other things happen. So you can't just discredit this based on that, because that's part of the manifestation. He's visualizing having intercourse with all of these women, multiple women, beautiful women, but that's what created the manifestation itself. His entire life shifted. He started making more money. He started networking. He started doing all these things that is attracting all of these women into his life, because that's what he's visualizing. So you have to understand that it's going to change you. If you're out there right now watching this video and you're planning on using this and attracting multiple beautiful exotic women, 3 or 4 different exotic women every single day, you're going to change your concept of yourself. You're going to realize that you have to have money, you have to have wealth, you have to have status, you have to have all of these things to attract and sustain those types of women and relationships in your life. So you're going to develop yourself and start getting money and start doing these things, start growing businesses, start creating this, start building your status. That way you can start attracting these kinds of women to you. And this works in anything you're trying to manifest. There's going to be things that are going to happen that are going to lead up to that result, depending on what it is, of course. But this type of manifestation is going to require something that things like that are going to change in your life in order to sustain that. And you're going to have to change your concept of yourself in order to attract those things, to sustain those types of manifestations in your life. Because if right now you're sitting on the couch or laying on the couch watching Netflix for 10 hours a day, living in a trailer, but now you're going to visualize sleeping with 3 or 4 different exotic, beautiful women, models to come to you, and you're imagining this, what's going to happen is you're going to wake up from that sleep. You're no longer going to be that person anymore. You're going to get up and be like, okay, I can no longer do this. I have to get in shape. I have to start a business. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to create. I'm not going to live. What am I living in this trailer? What's going on with my life? As soon as you successfully land this visualization and you impress the subconscious mind, you're now going to be a new person. It's going to change you, and you're going to all of a sudden be like, what am I doing? What have I done with the last 5 years of my life? I'm going to do this. I have all these ideas now. I want to start this business. I have this great idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get in the gym. I'm going to start growing my status. I'm going to start networking. I'm going to do all this. And you're going to start creating all of these things. And before you know it, you're going to have these exotic, beautiful women in your life, these models or whatever you're trying to manifest. But this is just an example of what's going to happen to you. You're not going to just remain in the trailer, sitting on the couch, watching Netflix for 10 hours a day. And these girls are just going to come knock on your trailer every single day and want to hang out with you. That's not the way that this works. Okay. So when you're visualizing something and you make it real in your imagination and you impress the subconscious mind with this thing, it's going to change your entire world. Your being, your concept of yourself is going to change, and you're going to shift to a different parallel reality, but it's going to happen fractionally. You're going to start shifting until you get to that reality where you actually have all of these things. But sometimes you're going to have to take some action, but it's going to be a subconscious action. These subconscious actions are going to happen based on your feeling state as you impress it into the subconscious mind with the new person that you are. So then it's going to create an entirely new reality. But free will doesn't exist in the three-dimensional world. It exists by you impressing the subconscious mind in your imagination with a new version of yourself. And when you do that, use that free will within yourself, then you subconsciously are going to act. It's going to be effortless. It's just going to be who you are. Just like getting up in the morning and going to the bathroom, or getting a drink of water, or whatever your normal routine is with your current concept of self, right when you wake up in the morning, whatever it is that you do naturally. So your life is now going to be naturally this way. You're naturally going to get up and you're going to start networking. You're going to start working. You're going to start going to the gym. You're going to be doing all these things that are going to be now that person that is now going to attract the thing that you've impressed the subconscious mind with. No matter what it is, whether that is lust or it's money or it's health or it's whatever it is, that's what's going to happen. And that's essentially what manifestation is. But there are two different types of manifestations. There is one where you change your concept of yourself, and there's another one where it's magical. It's like completely magical, and you don't have to do anything to bring it into your life or to change something in your life. But when you change your concept of yourself, everything in your world's essentially going to line up with that. You're going to be getting everything that you desire, and your life's going to be pretty perfect, based on this version that you've created of yourself. And you're not going to have to use, too much of the magical aspect anymore. Because if you haven't changed your concept of yourself and you're manifesting things magically all the time, you're not going to be able to sustain those types of things, because you're always going to go back to the old version of you, and then it's going to just disappear in your life. But if you change your concept of yourself, you're automatically going to be manifesting these magical things in your life. Your world's going to line up with who you are, and you're going to be automatically and subconsciously manifesting great things to come into your life, because that's who you are. You no longer have to magically manifest and visualize every single night and do all these things to try to change and manipulate your world, because your world's already going to fall into place perfectly based on this new version of yourself. I mean, sometimes I find that I have to visualize things to change if something does go wrong, but I usually just go back and do the work on my concept of myself and visualize myself if I've fallen out of a state. So I try to be present with my thoughts and make sure that I don't fall out of character or fall out of this current concept of self that I am. But in later videos, I'm going to cover the techniques on how to manifest things magically into your world as well, and change your concept of yourself. But stay tuned for those. But I'm going to break this technique down. The primary reason for this video was to explain my grandfather's technique on lust, not love so much, but lust, because this is what this one is going to cover. But I am going to cover a love technique in a later video as well. That's also in this book, You Are the Way. In my book, You Are the Way. But the first thing that you want to do, okay, this is how many nights you do it, and this is what you do exactly. I'm going to give you a brief little breakdown here for application form. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to find the person that you want to be in bed with, or you want to have a lusting relationship with. Okay, so you find the person, you talk to the person, you smell, you capture and download all the information, all the five senses about her. If you can touch this person, if you can smell this person, you can, feel this person, hear this person's voice. You want to hear all these things. The voice is very important for this technique, because that's what you're going to be creating in your imaginal act, is what this person's voice sounds like. Okay. Maybe also how they feel, what their touch is like, what their skin feels like, and things like that. My grandfather used to go into in depth and detail, but all of the features and the details of this person, you want to create that. Okay. And you want to do this for about 3 to 7 nights, okay? But continue if you don't see any results, or if you're having any issues with the visualizations and you're not really feeling them. Keep on doing this until you get this down, until you can really, really feel it happening in your imagination, as if it's really happening in the three-dimensional world. And you get that, like Neville Goddard talks about, that explosion, that explosion that happens, when you come back from your imaginal act. You're actually shocked, because you are now in a world, you're like, you really felt that your imaginal act was real to you. So you really want to get your imagination this powerful. If you really want to start attacking life and really manifesting some great things, like very, very fast in your life. But okay, so you want to do this for 3 to 7 nights, depending on how well your imagination is, how real you can make it. But you want to download this information, and you're laying in bed with this person in your imagination. And then this person is laying next to you, and they tell you how great of a lover you are. They tell you, but you don't have to use that specifically. You can create anything you want. I missed you so much, or I love you so much, or where have you been all of my life? Whatever implies that this person is now with you, and it's like exciting, and it's like relieving, and it's like that satisfaction that you have, you know, of whatever your desire is, the feeling of that being completed. Just create something that this person says to you that gives you that feeling state, that changes your concept of yourself as you're impressing that into the subconscious mind. So you want to do all this. You want to create this scene as vivid as you possibly can. Make it about 10 to 15 to 20 seconds long, and then you want to loop the scene over and over until it becomes real to you. And you want to lay, as you're going to sleep, you want to lay in like a position where you're not going to just, you know, nod off to sleep real quick. You want to lay like, if you usually sleep on your back, sleep on your side, or if you usually sleep on your stomach, sleep on your back. You know, a position that that you usually just don't follow. You know, I want you to fall asleep right away. Then I want you to loop the scene over and over and over for about, try to stay up for at least 10 to 15 minutes doing this, imagining this, running the loop over and over. When your mind starts to drift, try to bring it back, keep bring it back over and over and over. Keep creating this feeling state as you're falling asleep, and do this for 3 to 7 nights. And it's not always going to be a huge shift in your life where you have to change all of these things and become rich and wealthy and all of those things. Sometimes it depends on what type of relationship you're trying to create. If you're trying to create you're trying to manifest someone to come into your life that you don't believe that you could get without having these things, you know, with all of these things, then it may take a little bit more for you to manifest that person. But if it's somebody that is not that far-fetched for you to see yourself with, you can manifest that person pretty simply and easy without having to change a lot of things. And this person may just come to your door and just start knocking, you know? So it doesn't necessarily have to be, you have to create all this wealth or anything. It's just the level of women that my grandfather was getting, you know, was necessary for him to have the wealth that he has in the clubs and all these things, you know, depending on what you're trying to manifest, how big of a shift needs to happen in your world in order for that to happen. But it's not always necessarily this way. It could be something that you are already lined up with, and you just match up with this person already. This person just hasn't seen you yet. So when you start manifesting and visualizing this person, then boom, they're going to come knock on your door, or something's going to happen that's going to make your manifestation come true. But that is the end of this video. There's one thing I wanted to point out, that I have a workbook PDF that I just published on my website. This is the instant communication meditation, the instant contact workbook printout that Neville Goddard covered in his VIP meetings with my grandfather that I covered in a previous video. But I created a printout PDF workbook that you can download, that you will find in the very first link in the description below if you are interested in that, to have an application form of creating or finding instant contact with someone if you want someone to contact you immediately. This is going to break all those steps down for you that are going to help you apply and manifest this into your life. All right, guys, that's the end of this video. Don't forget to give me one thing you are grateful, and I love you, and I will see you in the next one.
To these states.